For nearly 100 years, the galaxy had known a tense, fragile peace. The Council of Sovereign Species, a bloated, self-righteous bureaucracy of the most powerful alien empires, believed themselves untouchable, the arbiters of galactic law. Their fleets stretched across star systems, their influence suffocating every colony, every station, every free planet. In humanity, we were the newcomers, the upstarts, the species that clawed its way out of its cradle far faster than the Council. Barely 2 centuries since the jump drive, and we were already settling further than any species dared. Our adaptability terrified them. Our innovation baffled them. Our refusal to kneel infuriated them, but the spark came not from a declaration of war. No, it came from something simpler. Something more personal, something unforgivable. The Zalzar Dominion, one of the Council's most brutal species, viewed humans as an infestation. Their tall, chitin-armored bodies and luminescent predator eyes had stalked the jungles of their homeworld for millennia before reaching the stars. To them, mercy was weakness, diplomacy was manipulation, and peace was temporary. When the human colony of Vespera IV, a frontier world rich in iridium and terraforming gases, refused to surrender its mining rights to a Zalzar corporate fleet, the Dominion responded not with sanctions, but with fire. The message came 2 hours after the bombardment started, an automated distress beacon screaming across subspace. By then, the orbital defenses were ash, the civilian transports were slag, and over 9.2 million humans were gone. Soldiers. Not fleets, families, children, scientists, engineers, farmers, humanities. Response was ... silence. For the first week. The Council misread that silence as fear. The analyst said, humans will fold. They will sue for peace. Offer reparations. They do not have the stomach for war. They were wrong. The silence wasn't fear. It was calculation. The Galactic Newsnet flashed with a single chilling announcement from Earth's unified Terran command. This is not a war. This is an extermination of those responsible. The Zalzar Dominion has made the last mistake anyone will ever make by crossing humanity. The Council laughed. Until the lights began going out. It started with the destruction of the Ravager. Spire, a Zalzar listening post orbiting the gas giant Brelkus. An unassuming station until a Terran stealth cruiser dropped out of phase space 3 kilometers away, deployed a weapon the galaxy had never seen before, and vaporized it in a singular flash of collapsing quantum fields. Nothing remained. Not debris, not signals, silence. Then the blackout of the Karthus expanse. 5 Zalzar supply depots, gone in a synchronized detonation. No warning, no alarms. Just a ripple of gravitational anomalies and then empty void. No one knew how. No one knew when. But suddenly, the Zalzar S-forward fleets began losing contact with command, one after another. Ships disappeared. Crews found themselves hunted by Shadow's stealth drones with AI so ruthless it violated galactic treaties on sapient warfare. And then came the humans. Not diplomats. Not negotiators. But the Valkyrie Armada and assault fleets so advanced, so heavily armed, that even Council analysts scrambled to explain how a species just 2 centuries into FTL travel could field weapons this sophisticated. The Terran ships were unlike anything seen before. Not the brute force hammerheads of the Zalzar, not the fragile, elegant cruisers of the Serena Lauri, but matte black vessels wrapped in adaptive metamaterials, bristling with rail cannons, directed energy beams, kinetic kill missiles, and something worse. The humans called them planet breakers. Zalzar S outpost on Drithin Prime, with a population of 800,000, received a transmission. Evacuate all civilians. You have 6 hours. Military personnel are not protected. You chose this. 6 hours later, the core of the planet ignited, split by gravitonic charges that turned its molten heart into a collapsing singularity. From the observation deck of the Terran carrier TSV Judgment, Captain Elena Vasquez watched as Drithin Prime folded inward, broke apart, and vanished into the screaming maw of its own physics. No warning shots. No mercy, the Council convened. In emergency session, Holograms of panicked diplomats filled the chamber. "They've lost their minds," cried the Drak ambassador. "This is disproportionate response," screamed the Ilari senator. This is genocide, spat the Zalzar delegate who, until 3 days ago, laughed while his people burned Vespera 4 to ash. Admiral Marcus Steele, representing Earth, stood silent until the noise died. Then, with eyes cold enough to freeze stars, he spoke. "You burned our children alive. This isn't genocide. This is accounting. For every innocent you took, we will take 10 of yours. For every city you razed, we will erase a world. You started this, you chose this, you made the last mistake anyone will ever make, by crossing humanity." And across the stars, the skies began to burn. The first time the Zalzar understood true fear was when the stars themselves vanished. Not figuratively, literally. Entire sectors fell into radio silence. Navigation beacons blinked out. Wormhole gates collapsed. Gravitational anomalies spiked to impossible levels, rendering faster-than-light travel unreliable. Then suicidal. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't nature. It was humanity, for a species dismissed as young. The Terran military-industrial machine had proven terrifyingly effective. Earth's scientists, once focused on medicine, environmental recovery, and peaceful exploration, had shifted overnight into producing weapons of war that violated everything the galaxy understood about physics, ethics, and sanity. The Terran strategy was cruel in its elegance. A fleet of Spectre-class interdiction cruisers seeded the entire Zalzar dominion with gravwell inversion mines. These exotic weapons generated localized fields that folded spacetime in ways that broke both FTL and subspace communication. Ships attempting warp jumps either failed or tore themselves apart mid-transition. Messages couldn't get through. Fleets couldn't coordinate. Command and control shattered. For the first time in Zalzar history, they were alone in the dark. Human cyber warfare eyes, code-named Cerberus, breached the Dominion's logistics networks. Every automated refinery shut down. Cargo drones crashed into orbit. Life support systems failed. Starports burned from inside out as their fuel reserves detonated. Remotely. Food, fuel, oxygen, gone. Billions of Zalzar civilians awoke to find their cities powerless, their ships grounded, their communications dead, and an unknown enemy whispering through hacked emergency channels. This is the price of your leadership's decision. Surrender the war criminals, or suffocate in the dark. But there was no leadership left to respond. Then the hammer fell. Terran, dreadnought, groups entered Zalzar space not as ships, but as executioners, flanked by stealth frigates, drone swarms, and kinetic kill platforms. They unleashed weapons the galaxy had only theorized about, orbital kinetic lances. Rods of tungsten the size of skyscrapers were dropped from orbit at relativistic speeds. Cities ceased to exist in moments, replaced by craters that glowed white-hot for hours. No energy shields, no planetary defenses could stop them. Where shields stood, they deployed graviton shear torpedoes, ripping apart spacetime around the generators, folding them into micro-singularities that swallowed themselves. And for the capital world of the Zalzar Dominion, Calzar Prime, humanity saved something special. The fleet arrived in low orbit without warning. Citizens looked up and saw the sky change. A black wall unfolded from nowhere. Not a ship, but a presence. A sphere of absolute nothingness, 1,200 kilometers wide. No light reflected from it, no sensors registered it. It was as if a hole had been torn in the universe itself. The weapon was called the Oblivion Engine, a Terran invention built in secret under Antarctica for the past 20 years. No alien species even knew humanity had cracked the dark energy equation that made it possible. It didn't fire beams. It didn't launch missiles. It simply erased matter, folding it into quantum oblivion. It descended over Calzar Prime like a curtain of death. In its final moments, the Zalzar capital broadcast one last desperate plea. We surrender. And then there was nothing. A planet that had existed for 1 billion years was gone. No debris, no dust. just a void. The gravitational footprint of the planet remained, a ghost mass. But the world itself had ceased to exist. Billions, gone. The Council of Sovereign Species watched in horror. Ambassadors that had mocked humanity just weeks before now stood in silence, their bioluminescent skin dimmed, their frills flattened, their antennae curled in dread. They scrambled emergency declarations, peace offers, apologies, but Earth's response was a cold, automated signal broadcast on every frequency. We are not negotiating. The time for diplomacy ended the moment Vespera 4 burned. Deliver the Zalzar leadership to us, bound, or watch as every planet in their dominion follows Calzer Prime into the void. The galaxy trembled. In the fringes, the minor races began defecting, fleeing their council allies, deactivating their fleets, broadcasting their neutrality on loop, desperate not to be noticed by the humans. The Valori Confederacy outright surrendered without a shot fired, sending their warships to Earth's orbit with weapons powered down, their crews kneeling on the decks in surrender positions. Humans had never taught them, but that instinct had delivered. The Drakh, once bloodthirsty warlords, signed unconditional peace treaties and opened their homeworld to human oversight, promising reparations before they were even asked. The Ilari, a species that had never fought a war in 10,000 years, offered their entire treasury to humanity in exchange for a single promise: do not bring the black ships here. And yet, for the Zalzar, it was already too late. The last remnants of the Zalzar fleet, a battered group of war-torn cruisers and carriers, tried to flee. They jumped to the Zurich Abyss, a starless region at the edge of the galaxy, hoping that the Terrans wouldn't follow. They were wrong. When they emerged, sensors immediately screamed. Dozens of Terran stealth destroyers had been waiting. For weeks. The Zalzar commander, Admiral Terran, stared at the display in disbelief. How? How did they know? How could they? And then the Terran signal arrived. You should have run further. The ambush was swift, brutal, and absolute. Railguns tore through shields like paper. Hypersonic torpedoes hunted crippled ships like wolves. Plasma lances melted hulls to slag. And when it was over, nothing remained, no survivors, no escape. Pods, no wreckage. Just silence. Koran's final log, recovered centuries later from the drifting wreck of his escape pod, contained only one sentence burned into the charred data core: the last mistake we ever made was crossing humanity. The war was over, not because a treaty was signed, not because negotiations succeeded, but because there was simply no one left to fight. The Zalzar Dominion ceased to exist, not as a government, not as a culture, not even as a memory. Entire star systems where their banners once flew were now sterile voids of spinning debris, melted planets and shattered moons, maps updated in real time. Where once labels read Dominion Space, now there was only one word stamped across the sectors in glowing crimson. The Council of Sovereign Species convened one final emergency session. It was the last time it would ever exist in its original form. What remained of its leaders trembled beneath the cold gaze of Earth's delegation, no longer diplomats in suits, but armored commanders, fleet admirals, and AI proxies whose presence radiated one clear message: we are not here to talk. Admiral Marcus Steele walked into the chamber with his hands clasped behind his back. Flanked by Sentinel-class war synths, autonomous battle constructs 3 meters tall, bristling with weapons, intelligence cores, and shielding, they weren't there for protection. They were there for demonstration. No translator was needed. No pleasantries exchanged. Steele's voice echoed through every channel, every translator, every mind in the room. The age of the Council is over. You mistook humanity's patience for weakness. You mistook our desire for peace as cowardice. You mistook our silence as submission. You were wrong. The rules have changed. Silence. Then he pointed toward the galactic star chart projected above the chamber. The sectors once belonging to the Zalzar blinked red. This space is now under Terran jurisdiction. No ship enters. No ship leaves. You will not harvest, colonize, or scavenge. This is the price of genocide. One of the Ilari diplomats, pale, translucent, shaking, tried to speak. And ... and what of the rest of us? What of the council? Steele's gaze was unflinching. You will dissolve the council, effective immediately. In its place, a new order, the Accord of Sovereign Worlds. Peace through balance, peace through accountability, peace because you now understand what the alternative looks like. Earth will not rule you. We do not desire empires, but we will enforce peace. And if anyone ever again thinks to threaten our people, look to the void where the Zalzar once stood. And remember, for decades, the galaxy whispered in terror, not of humanity's weapons, but of our resolve. Entire civilizations rewrote their histories to paint humans as guardians of balance, carefully avoiding any phrasing that might hint at insult, lest they tempt the Black Fleets. Piracy dropped by 98%. Wars became nearly non-existent. Trade flourished, but under Terran watch. And every civilization, no matter how powerful, no matter how arrogant in the past, maintained a permanent, respectful silence whenever dealing with the species known as Homo sapiens. But humanity didn't stop there. With the resources seized from the Zalzar, Earth launched the Aegis Project, a network of planetary shields and orbital defense. Grids designed not just to protect Terran space, but to render Earth itself an impregnable fortress. Terraforming efforts expanded. Mars bloomed into a green world. Titan's methane seas turned to blue oceans. Venus, once a toxic hell, now shimmered as a jewel of bioengineered forests under sapphire skies. The Terran Navy swelled into something not seen in galactic history. No longer a military, no longer a fleet, but a presence, a shadow that stretched across the stars. The edge of the Milky Way. Humanity constructed the Erebus Array, a black obelisk the size of a moon, designed to monitor intergalactic space for threats beyond this galaxy. Some wondered, did humanity fear something bigger? Or were they simply ensuring no mistake like the Zalzar would ever happen again? Both were true. Generations passed. Children born on Earth, on Mars, on Proxima Centauri, heard stories of the war, stories that were taught not with pride, but with a solemn, grim reminder, never again, but always be ready. Alien children, too, learned the story. Their textbooks didn't omit it, couldn't omit it. In classrooms orbiting distant suns, teachers pointed at holograms of the Terran fleets and said, "This is why we respect the humans. This is why peace matters." But peace was only peace because it was enforced. One day, in a distant system near the galactic rim, a pirate cartel attempted the unthinkable, hijacking a convoy under Terran protection. They didn't succeed. They didn't even survive long enough to regret it. The response was not a fleet, not an invasion. A single Terran stealth drone entered the system. Nobody even saw it arrive. The next morning, every pirate ship, every station, every weapons depot ... ceased to exist. Precision orbital strikes reduced them to glassed craters on asteroid surfaces. Not a single life form survived. Not a single byte of data remained. On the nearest habitable planet, the terrified locals awoke to find a message broadcast on every device, every screen, every neural implant. The mistake you made ... will be the last. And so the galaxy spun onward, but forever, written in the dark between the stars, was a warning. A simple truth burned into the fabric of history, of memory, of fear. The last mistake you'll ever make was crossing humanity. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy was quiet, not because of hope, not because of diplomacy, but because the stars themselves remembered what happened when the humans were crossed, and they would never, ever forget.